All right. So today we've kind of beat responsiveness to death, and we want to try to spruce up our websites so that they work better not only on the browser on a desktop, but on a mobile device as well. So we're going to introduce jQuery, which is just a library of JavaScript functions compressed together into one massive library that I can do stuff with on the client side. It's a client-side library. It doesn't do anything on the server side. It's only client-side. Now, it does allow me to interact with some server using AJAX calls, and we'll get into that later. But it just makes manipulating the client side really simple. Since most of you should have had JavaScript before here, the dealing with the document object model in straight JavaScript is tedious. It's difficult to walk through. You have to say document.getElement by ID, and then you pass it the ID number, and then you have to keep doing something.something.something.something to get at the final element that you want to manipulate. So you want to get text out of a form element, or you want to see if they clicked a button. You want to intercept those things. jQuery does this with all of these functions that you can attach to various events in the browser, and it just makes your website just really cool. You can add some cool stuff. And so after a while, you might want to start taking things out. You've added all this cool eye candy stuff, and it makes your website, less usable. So since it's so easy to do, you have to kind of police yourself and not do everything that it can do, right? So first of all, let's talk about jQuery. jQuery, you can go to JQuery.com. And this is where it is housed. It's an open source JavaScript library that has been built up over many years. I don't remember exactly when it came out, somewhere around 2005, somewhere around there. And back in those days, it had a bunch of competing libraries, and there still are some out there. A library you might have heard called Prototype, Scriptaculous, and jQuery. Those were the three main ones that most people used, and sometimes they used both of them or all three of them because one library had some functions that the other library didn't. And jQuery has become the dominant one, and it has lots of plugins and things that people write, a lot of open source code that lets you manipulate the client-side browser really easily. So there's lots of stuff you can add. So it's just a JavaScript library. You include it in your file, like we've already done, at the bottom of your file. And why do we put it at the bottom? So it loads last because we're not going to be using JavaScript or jQuery until the document is loaded anyway. Why not load it at the last and let it take its time on that, load the rest of the stuff so you get something in front of the eyes of the user as quickly as possible. So we're going to load this at the bottom. So right now I'm requiring this off of the jQuery site, code.jquery.com/jquery.js. And so that's going to make, the browser is going to make a web request to jQuery.com to get this file. So, yeah, you had a question.
You have to load the document in JavaScript or jQuery beforehand? It's going to be loaded last anyways?
We're going to do a function called ready to make sure that the document is loaded completely before we do anything.
But if it's already loaded beforehand,
Then you might be starting code on code trying to manipulate elements in the HTML that aren't there yet. So you don't want to do that. We cannot do anything in jQuery until the document is completely loaded, completely turned into the document object model, so that I can manipulate it. All right. So this is jQuery.com. It's going to go to code. If I go to that URL, let's just go there and show you what it is. This is just loading an external JavaScript file, like our CSS. And this is the file that it loads. this long file. Look how much JavaScript is in here. Look at that sucker. Huge. Wow. Lots of stuff, okay? So that's the entire jQuery library. And they have another version that's been minified and uglified so that it's compressed and you're shipping a lot less bytes that way. All right? So there's several different ways that we can utilize this library. I could download this and store it on my own server and put the jQuery library in my JS file. That's one way to do it. I could just take the file and serve it off of my own server, and then I know it's there. It's never going to change. Or I can serve it off of jQuery's servers, which are on what they call a CDN. Anybody know what a CDN is? Content Delivery Network. Okay, a Content Delivery Network. So that bears some description. A Content Delivery Network here, this is from Wikipedia. The idea of a Content Delivery Network is that we've duplicated content on servers all over the world. Okay? So when I make a request to a particular URL, the routers and the domains even before that see that this file is going to be requested from a content delivery network, and it will route you to the closest computer geographic-wise. And it will actually download that file from, say I'm here. It might download it from a Canadian server because that might be the closest one. Whereas if I'm over here in Iraq trying to download the jQuery code, it's going to find one here in Turkey. It's going to load that one instead of going all the way back to the main server and everybody hitting the main server. It's delivering this content across a wider network, and the domains and the routers figure out which one is closest to you, and you get the file a lot faster. So you might think that you could serve the file faster, but these CDNs are much faster. So there are 3 different CDNs that you can download this from. Microsoft maintains a jQuery content delivery network. Google does. And then jQuery itself, through this JQuery.com, uses a content delivery system called MediaTemple. So there's 3 different ways, and it just depends on how you load this. We're not in here. Here, how you load what URL you're using to get that from the CDN. The other nice thing about CDNs is a browser gets this file once, and they see it in another website. They say, I've already got that in my local cache, so I'm not going to go out and get another copy of it. I'm going to use the one that's on your computer. So that's the ultimate in speed, right? I'm just going to load that right up. I don't have to go make a request to the web at all. So it's likely that the user has at one point in time downloaded a website that had the jQuery from a content delivery network. So it just makes sense to use that. Google has one as well. Google's is, I don't remember where Google's is. Let's go find it. So how do we Google for that? Well, let's go to Google. We're going to say Google CDN jQuery. And well, it takes us back to the jQuery site. There are different ways. This is the MediaTemple one. Google's CDN is here. It gives us a link to Google, and here's Microsoft's. So Google's is here, and you basically, where is it, jQuery? Whoa, that's really annoying. Is that annoying or what? On a hover to expand that? Yeah. Right. So this is the URL I would copy and put into my web page if I wanted to use Google's content delivery network, which is very popular. And this one, you can tell, has been minified, jQuery.min.js. So let's copy that just to show you that over here. I could use that one instead of this one. Obviously, I'm not going to load both of them. If I use this URL, let's see what that looks like. Yeah, interesting. Let's go. I wanted to show it to you in the browser. That's interesting. It's not there either. But this is the URL. I just take off the first forward slashes. So this is minified and uglified, and it's a significantly smaller file, right? So that's fine. If I don't care about debugging the actual jQuery library, I don't care what it looks like. The functionality is the same. It doesn't matter. All right? That's some ugly stuff right there. So I'm going to go with jQuery's MediaTemple CDN. And when this page loads, it's going to go out there and get that JavaScript file. All right? Any questions on that? Yep. Not necessarily. So in this one, you see it's loading jQuery 1.9.1. And so once you do that, that will not change. Okay, this one potentially will change as new versions come up. So it's usually better to specify a specific version so that you don't get, your site doesn't fall apart later on. So it is the same jQuery up to the version number, depending on the version number. Right. That version, if they add something, they'll change the version number. So it'll actually be a new one. And they'll keep the old ones around. So you could still be using jQuery 1.2 if you wanted to. A lot has changed in that time. So.
But the functionality of your website would still be the same.
Would be the same because I'm using the old one. Right. Exactly right.
It wouldn't force you to change that way.
Right. Right.
So that's where you get all your money.
That's right. Change requests. So I was curious which CDN was better. So I found a site .
2021, huh?
I found a site that did a test by sending, really, come on.
Did 2021.
I did that over.
You did it over again.
I typed it over again. Okay, so this is a site that did a test where they hit the CDNs. They requested the file, and it says down here, they tested it. Where is it? They did a 30-day period, and they tested for an entire year. It looks like, I can't remember. They showed so many, like one request a minute over a year time frame, something like that. You can read that. But this is their results. So Microsoft, surprisingly, is the slowest. That's the response time. So the longer bars are bad. Okay? So the green, Google, it did beat it in North America, very slightly. But look how different it is in Europe. Bad. So that means their content delivery network is not as robust in Europe. It is better in America, but not in Europe. So they don't have as many different data servers serving this content. And MediaTemple kicked them all in the butt, right? It's all good stuff. So Google's was also slow, which surprised me. And MediaTemple does not do an HTTPS version. So for that case, you'd have to use Google or Microsoft. Yeah, they're pretty close. Really bad in Europe. Microsoft needs to step it up in Europe.
Nobody uses Microsoft in Europe. It's like the metric system.
Yeah.
Because worse.
Our infrastructure is the oldest.
Ours are, oh, you mean total? Europe versus here? I don't know. It's a good question. We have too much traffic on our network.
Because we spend all the time and resources developing something, and then they get the new stuff.
They get the new stuff, right. Exactly right. That's very possible.
Although Google's starting to roll out fiber optics.
Yeah,
Very responsive.
that's what we want. So this is another graphic of a CDN. This describes every computer going to one server. So if you served it yourself, everybody coming to your website has to get that from your website. A CDN is you're requesting it, but it could get it from a lot of different places. And so it's significantly faster. It spreads the load across multiple servers and can be expensive to use. One of the biggest content delivery networks is Akamai. And they can get fairly expensive, but big businesses like WebMD and some, Apple probably uses them, and Microsoft, I don't know, that maybe they use their own system. But you can serve graphics, for instance, are a big thing. You send these out to the network, the CDN. You copy it up from your business side. You copy it one place. They then distribute it across all of their sites, and you have one URL in your website. And depending on where you are in the world, it's going to find that and bring it down from the closest server to that user. And so it makes your website significantly faster, but it's also fairly expensive. So big businesses use this. I wouldn't use it on your mom and pop shop.
You might not know it's Microsoft. But what is your business
No, they have all their servers in South Asia. Oh, the question was that does Azure do the same thing with a content delivery network? They have different server farms, I know. So like here on school, when we're setting ours up, we go to Southeast Asia or East Asia, right? So those are clusters of computers that they have over there. So obviously not a true CDN, or we'd have one here in Oregon or Washington or something, possibly. Yeah, I know, he can do anywhere, yeah. So anyway, that's a quick CDN thing. Business side, you'll deal with it if you work for a larger company, but not necessary at this point. So in this case, that's why I chose the MediaTemple one, which is the jQuery code.jQuery.com. So that's the library that I'm going to include in my site. All right?
But that one keeps updating, so you would technically have to make sure that all your jQuery works with that latest version at all times.
Yes, yes. All right, so this is your question, Ryan, before about the viewport. You need this line in there,
Okay.
and that should fix your because mobile devices try to scale the website automatically for you, and if you don't want that, then you need to put this in here. All right, so let's play with some jQuery. jQuery is cool. jQuery is fun. Let's go back to jQuery. If you don't know JavaScript, they have a good set of documentation here. If I can find it again. So they have all the versions going back to 1.0. Where was it? Shoot. Yeah, I'm in their docs. It's no. Shoot, I lost where I had it. Let me pause. All right, here it is. This is, if we go to api.jquery.com/types with a capital T, then we have this page. And this talks about JavaScript in general, not just jQuery, but JavaScript. And if you go through this and understand all of it, then you're doing good. All right, this talks about strings, numbers. This is all JavaScript stuff, math, parsing numbers. So those of you guys that have been in here, you know how to do that. Converting numbers to strings, booleans, objects, the dot notation, arrays, iterating through stuff using the for loop, prototyping. This is a little more advanced. Arrays, you should be able to write arrays in your sleep by now. Iterating through the arrays. We can use while loops or for loops. For loops are most common. And what variable do we use inside of here? I, right? I think Lynn is very specific about that, right? So I stands for what? Index. It's the index that I'm looping through. And usually I'm looping through to get at something in an array. So, all right, so this goes through all types of JavaScript. I would read through this if you're rusty on JavaScript. And especially when we get down to these elements and events, we're going to be doing a lot with these event type things. And then we'll do jQuery at the end. So Ajax at the end. Ajax at the end. All right, so there's lots of API stuff here. Basics. I would read through these. These are good stuff to learn. Your book that I required has a lot of information about jQuery. It was that big fat one, jQuery or Pro jQuery. That big, huge black one. That was the other one. Yeah, I have an ebook one too. That's the way to go. It's like 3 inches thick if you were to print it out. Yeah. All right. So let's show you some stuff. This is my page. No, it's not, actually. I think I closed it somewhere. No, you need to have images and stuff in it and make it look like a real website. How lazy do you want to be? I said that it's something you need to be proud of. If you're proud of it, I will never hire you as a web designer. A web developer either. All right, so this is a site. This is already including my JavaScript, my jQuery library. And so I can use the console to start playing around with stuff. And let's do that. If I can remember the shortcut. There we go. So this is the console. Now that I have it open, I typically reload my file. And it talks about going out and getting stuff, all right? So here's the main points of jQuery are that we have this shortcut function name. Now, we can use the word jQuery, that's the function name, and I can say, find me something on the page that has a certain class. Okay, so let's look at this button. Let's look at this element. This is inside of a P. It's got a class of a button. All right, so I want to find the element on the page that has the class of a button. So I'm going to say .btn because that's how we would declare it in our CSS files, right? A dot says that's one of our own custom classes. So when I go and query my web page for that, I'm saying return me the element that has a button in it. Now, what do these square brackets mean? An array of what? Buttons, or an array of elements that have the class BTN associated with it. So they might not be a button, but most likely they are. There's other buttons down here, so there's more than one button. All right. So I can say dot length, and that tells me I have 8 buttons on my page, or 8 elements on my page that have the class of BTN. So this method here is given to us by the jQuery library. The jQuery is the name of a method, and by default we're selecting something on the page, and then we're going to do something with it. So almost always the first part of a jQuery statement is selecting something. We want to look at something so that we can do something with it. Does that make sense? We want to select something on the page. So anything inside of these parentheses is a selector, just like CSS. It supports all of the CSS3 selectors. So all of those complicated child ofs and arrays of attributes and things like that. There's hundreds of ways to select different things. I can select a parent of a button, all of that kind of stuff goes in these double quotes as a parameter to my jQuery function. Everybody got that so far? A lot to learn there. So this is being typed a lot, jQuery. So they made that simpler to just use the $sign. The $sign is an alias for that same function, jQuery. So when I say $sign and give it some parameters, it's doing exactly the same thing. Bling, whatever you want to call it. I call it a $sign. So, and I can say .length. So when this is returning an array, it's not quite an array, but it has a lot of properties of the array class from JavaScript, such as length. I can get the length of the array. But I can't do a join on an array of jQuery objects. That doesn't make sense. So they don't implement all of the methods, but some of them are pretty useful. So that's the same thing. I get an 8 here. What, with the $? Yeah, only if you're going to use some other library, and that's why they have the $sign and the jQuery spelled out. Other libraries that jQuery used to compete with, like Prototype and Scriptaculous, did the same thing with their $sign. They made it specific to them. So if you want to use it with another library, you're going to have to change the $sign or use jQuery instead specifically. So that doesn't happen as much anymore because most people are dropping the other libraries. So does that make sense so far? Are you with me so far? You're going to be doing $sign something selector a lot. A lot. All right? So let's get used to some of these selectors. Let's say I want to get all of the p tags. And let's call length on it right away. I have 16 p tags in my website. And this is all relative to the document object model here, right? I've got a p tag, and it might have some children. So these 2 p tags here, are they children of each other? They're siblings, right? So this is their brother and sister. They're on the same level of each other. So this, even no matter how you format your HTML inside the code Chrome Web Tools, it formats this based on how it thinks the DOM is supposed to look. So if you've got a P next to each other, they're going to be siblings. They're going to be on the same level. And a div within a div, is this a child or a sibling of this div? It's a child of this div, right? And they have different classes, etc. So this here represents the document object model. It's a hierarchical representation in memory of all of the elements on my web page. That's really all it is. It's a way of traversing. They talk about traversing the DOM, meaning going down into the bowels of my spreadsheet in hierarchy or back up again. So I'm traversing down. I'm into my footer. Here's my P that's in a footer, etc. What?
Can you highlight or change the color of the H's?
I can do all kinds of stuff. We'll get to that. Not yet. Baby steps. So I can also get the footer. And that gives me the element. It's still in an array, notice, but there's only one footer element on my page. And what's nice about these Chrome tools, I can look at that element as if it's a chunk of HTML. It displays it as a chunk of HTML, but in reality, it's a JavaScript object that represents this block of HTML. So a JavaScript object has a lot more properties associated with it. It's got different things that I can do with that. Okay? So how would I select this? Okay, so first thing to do is find it. So let's inspect the element and see that that's an H1 tag. All right? So I can go and, in my console, say, find me the H1 tag. And there you go. I found an array of objects. Happens to be one object in there, but it's an array of jQuery objects. Keep that in mind. It's not an array of a string of an H1. They're jQuery objects. Keep that in mind. What? They're nodes. They're objects. A node is an object. So, semantics. Right. There's a slight difference there. So, how would I get these links then? An A tag. Okay, so let's go inspect it. Let's see, that's an A tag. So let's go get a list of all the A tags on my page. All right, so that gives me an array of all of the A tags on my page. Isn't that cool? That's just really amazing.
But you got a bunch of extras.
I've got a lot of them, right? So if I want to narrow this down, I could say I want all the A tags that have a class of brand. And I would put it right next to each other. I get these confused. All right, that gives me only the A tags that have the same class of brand. Now, there might have been several. Do I have any others that have a class? Here's a navbar link.
Those are actually LIs.
Yeah, here's some buttons. So I could do $a.btn. That gives me all the A tags that have a class of btn. Now notice some of these have a btn plus some additional classes, but it at least has the btn class. And they all have the btn class. Isn't that cool? You just can't go wrong with this stuff. This is amazing. If you try to do this in JavaScript without this library, you'd be here all day trying to figure out the get element by document yada yada yada, and it's painful. So this does not only does it make, and you don't see the use of selecting items yet, but you will. It makes selecting items on my page a lot simpler, but it also handles cross-browser compatibility for you automatically in the library. If you've ever tried to write JavaScript code that works on IE, you pull your hair out because IE is so non-standard. It's just a joke. So you're constantly fixing it to work in IE. Well, they know all the problems when they built this library, and they worked around those for you. So I can call this $a.button on any browser, and it will come back with the same stuff. I don't have to worry that that function is not available for me on IE. I've got to use a get element by name instead of by ID. They know all of that for me, so they take care of that issue for me. Isn't that sweet? We'll learn a lot more about jQuery because this is fun stuff. You'll see how fun it is when we get to changing stuff. So that's it for today.